can now organizer and moderator. That's the trick.
Okay, that works.
You need both roles, maybe?
Yeah. Better?
Now it works, yeah.
Okay, I'll just go through the screens to see if you get a screen change.
Yeah, works.
Okay, I think it's time to begin. So welcome everyone to the Agile Lean Europe 8th Bathtub webinar conference. This is the fourth Bathtub conference of this year, which means we must have a conference coming up soon, which in fact we do. So a quick announcement before we begin, that the Agile 2013 conference is scheduled for the 28th to the 30th of August and is in Bucharest, Romania this year. There are still places left to register if you haven't registered already, and the program is currently being finalized and will be completed in the next couple of days. So for this evening we have, over the next 2 hours, we have 4 speakers, 4 great speakers talking on some really interesting topics. But before we start, we'd just like to explain, I guess, a few logistics. So everyone is muted except the speaker and the moderator this evening. At the end of each talk, which will be, say, maybe 20-25 minutes, there will be some time for Q&A at the end of each session. Please post questions in the chat window, which should be on the right-hand side, lower right-hand side of your window, and I or one of the other moderators can read out the questions to the speaker. We find it's easier that way rather than trying to enable people's microphones. And if you're following us on Twitter, our hashtag is AgleBathtub. So a quick thank you to the organizers, so Mike Lieber and Fabian, Christoph as well, and my name is Russell Hill, and I'm going to be moderating this evening. So our agenda this evening, we have first up we have Frank. Frank will be talking about scaling Scrum and what big companies can learn from startups. Lisette will be speaking at 9:30 and talking to us about Happy Melly. At 10 o'clock we have Werner, who will be talking to us about systemic coaching and how that applies to Agile teams. And at 10:30, Anders will be talking to us about scaling Agile from small startups through to rapid growth. So looking forward to all of those. So now I think it's time to hand over to Frank. If we can just do a quick microphone swap. Frank, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you.
Okay, over to you,
also,
Frank.
I extend my thanks to all the organizers of this amazing event. This is actually my first time I joined one of those online seminar presentation thingies. That's great. I want to talk about what big players can learn from startups. First of all, where am I actually? Oh, there we go. That's me. So if you can picture me, I'm 43 years old. Do have a CS degree from the last century, actually. So it's been quite a while ago. And I've spent quite a few years in IT, seeing software development from all sorts of different angles. As like, well, as a developer, of course, for a start, but later on a project management, team lead, release management, building up a team of Scrum Masters, all sorts of different experiences there, and was lucky for a year to become a CTO of a small startup after introducing Scrum for like more than 4 years in a mid-size company of about 500 people at Immobilien Scout, which is the leading real estate or property portal in Germany. And when I joined this startup, this was quite a different experience to the larger companies I've been working before. And that's what I want to talk about today a bit. What actually is different in a startup and what maybe larger organizations and companies could actually learn there to adapt their organizational structures or the way they introduce Scrum. So we're talking startups. Many large organizations tend to see startups as the role model, the goal they would like to achieve with agile transitions to become more or less like a startup, have a similar approach and feel to how they work. But there's a lot of myth involved in the startup experience, or what they believe is startup experience. What I think is startup guys work day and night and weekends and have no life or love outside the company, and this is quite wrong. This here is an actual picture of our Passau office of Analytics, the startup company I've been working with. And the guys here in front of the office, which unfortunately got flooded last month heavily, playing hacky sack. So they certainly have a break. It's not all about working that the startups achieve more by working harder, more in long hours. The reason that they seem to achieve more are quite different, really. So let's have a look into how a startup really works, or under what conditions startups really work. There are a lot of constraints they have to work under. There is usually heavy competition and only a vague understanding of the market these companies work in or try to access with their new products. Budget is usually pretty low, so money. We had the situation that we knew that money would be running out within 2 months for a whole company of about 60 people, so it wasn't so small anymore. And we had not finalized the agreement for the next tranche of venture capital money at the time. So the budget is certainly a constraint for most startups, probably any startup, and also a pretty low experience how to organize, how to grow, how to build products, how to grow such a product, such a company, such an organization. On the other hand, what you have within the startup is you have full responsibility for about everything within this company, for any success, any failure, and you have to organize not only how you build your product, your software, or whatever your product may be. You also have to organize how to introduce new people, how to get new offices. At the time I joined the company, we had just started with a new second office in Berlin, which is about 7-8 hours train drive from Passau. To have access to more developers and other experienced stuff, also as to more customers and markets from Berlin. And you see here in the picture my small Lupo with a pretty big trailer. And this trailer would contain the furniture for a new office. So this is the CTO getting the furniture in, basically, and this is really how we started there in Berlin, and this is probably very likely how the whole company started in the beginning, where the CEO probably did the same at the time. And this actually creates an amazing feel for ownership, or for how will you say? Well, it is your baby. Not only the product, not only the team, but also these companies, you build it up, and you own basically everything within this company. You have to take care of everything, so a lot of distraction, but on the other hand, you can build your working environment as you like it. You can build your team as you need it, and everyone feels involved and very, yeah, very much like owning the place or part of the place. So instead of working very hard and having no weekends, what we see here is a lot of distraction and doing all sorts of things other than building products. How still is it that apparently startups seem to achieve more than many larger organizations in shorter time and with less budget and under such constraints? If we look at nowadays big player reality, like large organizations, your team doesn't really own the place. Your team is usually influenced and has to interact for all sorts of different requirements that you have with all sorts of existing governance, different departments of your company, like budget controlling, procurement, or human resources, travel operations, all this stuff. You can't take care of this as a team yourself anymore, but you will have to interact with those departments, and you are dependent on their responses, on their response times, on their processes, and you have to adhere to those, which creates quite a lot of dependencies. And these usually slow down work often a lot more than taking care of many of those things yourself, especially if they're smaller issues, that they often are, like traveling to, I don't know, the next city, which only involves getting a train ticket, getting there and getting back, and maybe a hotel room. That is probably for you done within 20 minutes. If you have to handle that through a department, it might well take a lot longer. And also, as a team, you don't have any influence on those processes, really, on those how these people work. And they usually build systems, processes, and teams that have locally optimized for their purpose, but not optimized to serve you very well. And this does not, as a team, allow you to feel that you own or can even influence your working environment. So even if you have a fully cross-functional team that can basically build all the product, you are still part of a large organization that might slow you down in anything else you might need to do, especially when it comes to procurement, where I give an example next. So the usual approach to scaling Agile is like we see here in a picture of the safe scaling Agile framework, where you install additional layers of organizational layers of teams, roles, etc. to distribute work and to get or to aggregate information back from the different teams. So basically, for a complex system of several teams that have to be aligned in some way, you add more complexity to handle just to handle all this, which in my view is not the best Agile or lean way to scale Agile for larger organizations. You are probably bound, or you don't have much alternative if you really build the big one problem, the big one product, which can't be like cut into smaller independent pieces. But for many products, if you look at them a bit closer, you'll find that it is quite easily possible to cut them to smaller sub-products that are pretty independent. And in particular, when it comes to new products that you want to start in addition within your portfolio, you usually here put them into a larger structure and slow them down from the very beginning, even though they could be completely or pretty or utterly independent of what you have built so far. Here we come to an example for procurement, just to make this more tangible for everyone. Let's say we need to speed up our build server and we need an SSD drive to put in. Within a startup, and this is really the way we did, because we had the Saturn market, the electronic store right next door. Someone popped down, bought an SSD for 120 euros. It took this guy probably about 4 hours to actually install this in the server and set it up, copy the data on and stuff. And after that, the speed up paid off. So within like half a day, the speed up paid off. And if you have a 10-person team and you save 30 euros a day in working hours, you have amortization of the invest within 10 days. Big players do this a much more clever way, because they can buy this SSD not for 120 but for 100 euros. But in order to do so, someone will have to put an order into an order system, which takes some time, costs maybe 10 euros. And then the offers are requested, which puts a delay in. This is actually an example from Deutsche Telekom. The developer then has to choose which offer he would prefer. Procurement also has to approve this, so another 10 euros spent in working time. And this is put into a shopping basket, management approval, another delay and another cost. Then we have saved 20 euros on the SSD. Then someone has to install this SSD, so there's probably 2 people, one from the operations staff who will actually install it in the server, and someone to set it up. And after that, you can start saving on the speed up time. And so, but in the end, you have an organization after 13 days, and you have quite a delay in the whole process. So it would, even for the big player, it would have been a lot cleverer to buy the SSD in the shop next door. So it is actually a myth that a procurement process will save you money. In all the small cases it won't. Well, when it comes to the very expensive Oracle license, that might be quite a different matter. But I believe 80% of procurement that is usually done by a team is probably a size similar to this. Even if it is a whole computer, is probably still cheaper to just pop down and buy this stuff. So what does this help me in a bigger organization? Let's see how we could release the brakes there. What we've seen here is we don't delegate the work to buy the SSD or to arrange for the travel. We delegate responsibility, and the responsibility stays with those people that actually have to do the job and know what they need and how to get that best. So don't tell people how to do their job from outside departments that actually define how to do the work within the team when it comes to the actual software development, quality or whatever, or procurement or travel or whatever it is. But just let people do the job and let them do whatever it takes to finish the stuff. Full responsibility. Don't push process. It is, well, we know that agile methodologies and lean methodologies rely on a pull system. What you do here within a large organization, you push a process and organizational interaction into these teams, and you force them in an infrastructure harness. Instead, what you could do as a large organization, you have the big chance to just offer a service. So, for instance, it is great to offer a procurement service that a team could use for larger investments, so that they could take care of to get the best offer in. These usually, for these it usually doesn't care if it takes a few days longer. But for the small staff, give the team budget and let them take care of these stuff themselves. So offer a choice whether the service is pulled by the team from the organization or they take care of their issues themselves because it is the more effective, cheaper way for the team as well as for the communication. Well, if we assign budgets, if we assign this freedom, or if we give this freedom to teams, wouldn't we lose control as a large organization of those teams? Well, a startup does work, and a startup does have to be very transparent when it comes to the their investors' interests. And if I set up a team in a startup way, so give them freedom of choice for their working environment, for the way they work, then in turn what I would definitely ask for is loads of transparency. So transparency replaces control, and as a management of such an independent team, I should be able to pull information at any time how they proceed in terms of budget, how much is earned so far, a cost overview and a forecast, how long the budget will last. This is what any startup will have to provide. It's easily done for a budget. In terms of progress, so what do I get actually for the invest? Well, Scrum offers, and other agile methodologies as well, offer great ways to grant this transparency on an operational level with burn downs and task boards, as well as on a tactical level with story backlogs, etc., and on a strategic level with a high-level prioritization and maybe product burn downs, market feedbacks, KPIs. So this is essential. So what I could do as a large organization, instead of installing additional layers to control the scale and the several teams that might work on one product or might work on different products, I could actually found a startup instead. And all I need is a great idea, a handful of great dedicated people, small amount of funding. It should be small. It should be just barely enough to build a new product. It requires loads of trust and unlimited freedom. So what you basically could do is, instead of installing all these additional complexity layers, you could split off teams in a startup way. there are several degrees to do so. So you could really found a new company, and that has been done. If you look at Deutsche Post, E-Postbrief, they did so with their development department. They also they put this out as a GmbH, so as an independent company in Berlin, quite away from Bonn, and gave them quite a lot of freedom just to build a better product. I only have 5 minutes left. I just here. All right. So, but you could also build like profit centers that have a good amount of independence, but are not fully independent, where you put all people together that you need to build a product, and give them their own budget and freedom. That could work as well, but have them independent and offer all the infrastructure within your great a bigger organization as a service. So this is quite a different approach to the usual scaling approaches. Don't build the organization to scale for large products, but break your product down into smaller ones, or spin off smaller new products that you want to build into independent teams, organizational units. Sounds great. Maybe Frank thought of all these more by himself. No, there's quite some good background that I would like to provide quickly. When it comes to scalability, if you look at software scaling, we would, well, the one approach that is usually taken is to build a smaller independent system and couple them loosely. So why shouldn't we do the same to organizations? And if you look at common-based law, and some of you might be familiar, where any software architecture and software system follows in its design the organizational structures that they are designed within. That would also mean that if you have these independent smaller units, it is very likely that you also end up with a very independent modularized software architecture in turn. So what the wisdom we apply to software architectures, we might want to apply the same to organizational structures. Lean principles, elimination of waste, like transport, inventory, handovers, production, all these are pretty well avoided within smaller organizations and structures. So some foundation there, go there where things happen. Agile, individual directions and responding to change, a lot easier within these smaller organizations. But also here are some of the principles. Build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. This is exactly what you could do with small teams that are dedicated to do this one job very well and to take any steps that are required to do so. And within such a small team, face-to-face conversation will be the usual mode of conversation, other than putting in requests to other departments within your organization, within your company, to get certain things done. Simplicity. Last but not least, some like background. Dunbar wrote an article or a book quite a few years ago about how we build in networks. We humans build networks, and much of this seems to go back to Stone Age villages of about 150 people. So good networks between people where everyone knows everyone has a good degree of trust and can work together as sort of a team are groups of up to 150 people. They develop strong relationships in between them, and with these relationships also trust, and are well capable to work together to a common goal. Whenever it gets larger, communication starts to get quite different and indirect. That makes Agile methods, application of Agile methods a lot more difficult. Recommended further reading, a couple of books that I really like, the Pop and Dig books and the Lean Startup gives also some insight into these ideas. That was what I wanted to talk about, and now I'm open to question and answers.
Okay, great. Thank you, Frank. You came in just in time as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Came in just in time on your presentation. So yes, if anyone does have any questions, they can type them into the chat window in the bottom right-hand side of the control panel. Just briefly, Frank, I was wondering, you mentioned I think Deutsche Post in your presentation. Are you aware of any large, shall we say, more traditional organizations that have deliberately adopted some of the learnings from startups and has helped them become more effective?
Well, this is the one example that I have some insight in, because it is actually run by a former boss of mine, and he only agreed to take over the job of CTO for the e-post brief, which is like an electronic version of a standard letter, pretty much. Only under the condition that he would be allowed to form a spin-off away from the headquarters and pretty much independent. He was granted that, and it seems to help a lot. Otherwise, I do know that quite a few companies do consider ideas of having pretty independent like cost centers or business units in particular for new products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Great. Well, it doesn't appear that anyone has posted any questions in the chat window, so I've noticed the time, it's just after past, so perhaps now we can switch over to Lisette. I think you're coming up next in your presentation, and Frank, thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you.
Lisette, can you hear us?
Oh, das ist wirklich schwierig. So, ohne Reaktion. Ging es einigermaßen?
Lisette, I think you're still on mute.
Yes, I'm now not on mute, I think. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Over to you, Lisette.
Okay, great. And are you able to see my screen okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, then I'll start. So again, my name is Lisette, and I'm pretty excited today because I'm excited to introduce you to a new experimental business and hopefully a new way of working called Happy Melly. Oops. And so first, though, before I start, I want to give a little bit of background information about myself so you have some amount of context, and that is I've been building online collaborative communities for about 8 years now. And part of that time was working with businesses to help set up online project management tools so that people could work remotely. And part of that time was also spent helping organizations set up private social networks. So these are organizations that have a large membership base located all over the world, and they needed a way to have discussions amongst themselves, post files to themselves, all in a private online community. Last year, I co-wrote a book called Engagement Management, a step-by-step guide to building a thriving private social network. And what you're seeing on the screen is just a screenshot of my blog that I have about remote working and building online communities. So as you can see, I'm pretty enthusiastic about the whole idea of online collaborative communities. And that interest began back in 2006 when I was working with a remote team to build a web-based project management tool. And this team worked from all over the world, and it was an extremely successful virtual office. And really, once I saw the power of what a thriving, focused, collaborative community could do, I just couldn't go back to working any other way. I was hooked. And I should mention that this tool, it wasn't just an online project management tool. It was actually built so that longevity scientists could have a place to share data in order to solve the problem of aging. And that was sort of the background behind why the tool was built. That was our vision. And I think most people working for the company were entirely inspired by that. So not only did we really get together and we did great things together, but more importantly, we had a great time while doing great things together, and it was just an amazing time. So I want to help create communities that are doing great things together, and what better way than by building businesses to be more like communities. And thus we come to Happy Melly. So my role on Happy Melly is I sit on the board of directors, and I'm helping to coordinate the global marketing efforts, and also working with some of the events. And I'm also working with another board member, Martin Boulders, on a new workshop about team collaboration. So the current working title is called Collaboration Superpowers. You'll be hearing more and more about that as time goes on. But really, to get to the heart of the presentation, which is that many people don't like their jobs. And because of this, many businesses are failing to survive in changing environments. And today, Fast Company says that over half of American workers effectively hate their jobs. So not just dislike, but hate their jobs. And we think that that is really a sad thing for a lot of different reasons. Because when we're happy at work, it was very simple. When we're happy at work, we're more motivated to engage and contribute. And I thought it was really interesting. The Gallup survey just came out, and Sergey, the chief geek on the board of Happy Melly, sent this to me. And in the survey, it said that the most engaged workers come up with most of the innovative ideas, create most of a company's new customers, and have most entrepreneurial energy. And I'm assuming that everyone here is listening to this presentation because you're interested in being part of a sustainable, thriving, and happy business. And Happy Melly believes that a business is actually just a community of people working together for a shared purpose and creating value. And if we take that assumption to be true, that a business is just a community, then it's best to grow it like that. So what we would like is we want you to join us and help us grow healthy, adaptive organizations that are more like communities so that we can increase happiness at work and do great things together. And more importantly, most importantly, have a great time while doing great things together. So all throughout history, collaborative communities have changed the world. And the most obvious example, and maybe the most appropriate example of this, is, of course, the Agile movement. And that, the Agile movement has changed the way that we develop software. It's changed the way that we've managed software projects. It's just changed the way that we do things in the world. And maybe a less obvious example, but one of my favorites is actually Kraftwerk, and it's the band Kraftwerk. And I took this example because I'm hopelessly addicted to rockumentaries, which are documentaries about rock bands. And so I'm up often after work watching rockumentaries. And I was watching one about Kraftwerk about 6 months ago, and they were talking about how Kraftwerk began as part of a community in the Zodiac Club in Berlin. And it really occurred to me that what created the Kraftwerk community was exactly some of the same ingredients of what created online communities that I was helping to build. So I'll talk a little bit more in depth about what those ingredients are, but essentially the Zodiac Club, where Kraftwerk began in the 70s in Berlin, was a place where musicians could get together and experiment with different sounds and different technologies, and the free atmosphere that it offered really attracted people from a variety of different scenes. There are people from the free jazz scene, there are people from the krautrock scene, and this free atmosphere and these new kinds of people really inspired new hybrids of music and different kinds of performance styles. And the Zodiac Club essentially just became a hive of activity and ended up being at the center of the blooming of Germany, German music at its peak, and Kraftwerk became one of the most influential bands of all time of electronic music. So we can see, I mean, there's tons of examples. You can see, with the business model canvas and all kinds of examples of collaborative communities. So then what exactly is Happy Melly and how does it all fit in? And there's a video that just came out. I've got a link to the video in my presentation, so if people download that, you can watch the video, and that gives a great overview of what Happy Melly is, but I'll try to explain it. Essentially, Happy Melly is a business that brings great ideas to knowledge workers. And the goal of Happy Melly is to turn work into a great and gratifying experience. Now, the core of the business is licensing games and courseware. So that's the core of the business. But we work with writers and designers to produce and distribute and translate various books and various videos. We also help with the development of websites and applications. And we essentially connect creators of courseware to facilitators. We connect facilitators to organizers. And in short, we grow a network for people to bring great ideas to unhappy workers. So Happy Melly is on a mission to create an inspiring network, an inspiring community of people, enabling each other to do great things. And then the question, of course, begs, well, why would you join? Why would you join Happy Melly? And one is that you share our purpose, that you would like to turn your work into a great and gratifying experience. It could also be that you share our values, which are freedom, transparency, which is very important, holism, systems thinking, and then let's not forget humor. Humor is also a very big part, because the third reason why you may want to join is that you want to run experiments in a supportive environment, and playfulness and experimentation is all very part of that. And I'll explain that a little bit more. So there are three main ways that you can join Happy Melly and transform businesses into communities. And the first way, and I'll go into depth of these, but the first way is to launch a legal entity. The second way is you're able to join as what we call a stakeholder. And the third way is to essentially inspire yourself and inspire others to become Happy Mellys themselves. So first I'm going to talk about a little bit about what it means to launch a legal entity. And that is, anyone who has the mind of an entrepreneur is welcome to join Happy Melly as a startup. And like I said, the core business is licensing of courseware and games, and the production of books and materials, the development of websites and apps. And legal entities can be located anywhere in the world. The purpose of doing it this way, the purpose of setting legal entities up anywhere, is that they can own properties and pay taxes and sign agreements and do any of the legal stuff where it makes sense. And what we expect from legal entities is that they will self-organize around the things that they like doing best. So, for example, maybe a Happy Melly in China wants to specialize in creating cool videos, while Happy Melly in Poland wants to co-coordinate courseware licensing for Eastern Europe. Maybe Happy Melly in the US wants to deal with publishing books and articles worldwide in the English language, whereas a Happy Melly in Argentina would localize all the materials for all Spanish-speaking countries. And of course, Happy Melly could be involved in organizing and supporting every Happy Melly could be involved in organizing and supporting local events. So it's the entities who sign the agreements with customers and suppliers, and facilitators and the content creators. The entities would send and receive payments and acquire properties, pay local taxes, and of course hopefully make a profit. And in short, the Happy Melly business is owned collectively by the legal entities. We currently have 6 legal entities, and there are 18 others that are on the waiting list. And we decided to start it small so that we could get all the details worked out and how the finances are going to flow and how the information will flow and what kind of information infrastructure that we need. But there are 18 other entities that are on the waiting list. And if anybody's interested in starting an entity, then just feel free to contact myself or any of the other people on the board, and we can give you the details on what's involved in doing that. So, and if launching a legal entity is not something that you're up for, then there's always the possibility of joining as what we call a stakeholder. And a stakeholder is any person who is somehow economically directly involved in the activities in the business, whether it's an employee or a shareholder or a customer or a supplier. Anybody can choose to become a registered stakeholder. And those stakeholders include writers, it can include developers, they include trainers, illustrators, people who are organizing events, people doing translations, anybody wanting to be involved in creating content for the business. So one of the things that we talked about was support for learning through experiments, because experimentation and play is extremely important. And Martin is starting the Happy Melly Experiments program to validate other ideas lean startup style. So essentially it's a system that takes people's ideas for things that they want to see if they're scalable, things that they want to implement worldwide. And it helps it helps create a pipeline of services that helps move ideas to implementation in the startup business. So we really believe that experiments are at the core of Happy Melly. Just like in the Kraftwerk example, the experimentation between various types of artists were really at the core of what made that such a special community. And so we believe that de-risking people's experience, helping de-risk people's experiments on whatever level really enables more people to pursue their own happiness. So you can call it an ecosystem, or it's an incubator, a playground. It's simply a way for people to experiment with ideas in a safe-to-fail environment. So if you have an idea for something that you want to try for a workshop, for a conference, or a translation, then this is the place to do that. Another aspect of being a stakeholder is publishing, and Vasco, another board member, has started Happy Melly Express, which is what we call the next step in the publishing revolution. And essentially the aim is to encourage self-publishing in a new way by providing services that the self-publishing websites and companies that are already out there that they don't offer. So we help curate and select and develop ideas together with the writer in order to help reach an audience to make the information available to anyone that's interested in the knowledge that you want to share. So this is something that if you're interested, then definitely you can approach myself or Vasco, and we can give more information about the Happy Melly Express, the publishing part of that. So I've explained a little bit about launching a legal entity. I explained a little bit about what it means to join as a stakeholder, and now I want to talk a little bit about how to inspire yourself or how to inspire others around you to become Happy Melly. I can imagine that becoming a legal entity is quite something to take on. Joining as a stakeholder is also quite a commitment, but we can create community in the businesses that we're already in the workplaces that we're already in. We can make our workplaces a better place ourselves and inspire those around us. And of course, one of the ways to do that is with using the Management 3.0 techniques. I mentioned Management 3.0 because it's right now the only brand within Happy Melly. Collaboration Superpowers, we're working on testing that to see if that's also another viable brand. I should mention that. So implementing techniques from Management 3.0 in the workplace. So the kudos cards, the delegation boards, all of the different things that are mentioned in Management 3.0. And then Collaboration Superpowers really focuses on collaborative play and enables cross-functional collaboration between individuals and teams and teaches people how to collaborate. So those techniques will be available shortly. But then earlier in the presentation I mentioned, well, there are some very particular ingredients that cause great communities to form where great things happen. And I have a huge list of this on one of my blog articles that I wrote recently, but I've narrowed it down to just 4 things, really, that I've noticed that in every great community, these 4 things are present. So the first thing is there needs to be a place where people with common interests can get together. So whether it's an online private social network where people can share information privately amongst themselves, or whether it's the conference room in your workplace, whether it's a club in the middle of Berlin, it doesn't really matter. There just needs to be a place where people with common interests can get together and talk to each other. The second ingredient is that there needs to be somebody who gets projects started, and there needs to be somebody who connects people with similar interests. So it's always just the person saying, hey, I noticed that you've created an instrument over here out of these materials, or this instrument that shoots fire. I didn't know if you know about this other band over here doing this similar thing. Or hey, I noticed you're working on this development project. Did you know that somebody over here is working on the same thing, and you guys should know each other. So there's always somebody who's connecting people to other people and people to resources in great communities. The other thing that's important is having a safe and tolerant atmosphere where experimenting and playfulness are supported and encouraged. I think this is probably one of the most important things of all the ingredients, is just being able to play and to experiment with ideas without having to worry about, is this going to be successful, is this going to come within budget. It just needs to be a place where you can play, where you can try something out without worrying if it's going to succeed or whether it's going to fail. You want to just put two various things together and see what happens. So that's something that needs to be created. And the last thing wasn't so obvious to me until I really started diving deeply into the rockumentaries, which is there's always one in every scene, and whether it be software or music or anything, in every scene there's always one or more people who are just absolutely excellent at what they do. And those people, those masters, they really, the virtuosity that they produce, they inspire and they delight and they motivate others to try things also, or just to be a part and to contribute. So it's always good if you notice that there's somebody who's just absolutely awesome at what they do, that rope them in and have them be part of it. Usually they'll want to be a part of it. They'll be part of it anyway, but it's natural. But I've noticed that in everything there's always somebody there who's inspiring and motivating others because of the virtuosity that they produce. So just to wrap things up, and it's a little bit short, but I'm a fan of shorter presentations. But Happy Melly again believes that a business is a community of people working together for a shared purpose. And given that it's a community, given that assumption, that it's best to grow it like that. And so with us, instead of having a hierarchy and allowing people to form and dissolve networks, we actually have a network where we allow people to create and destroy hierarchies. So that's really the main difference. And the goal, again, of Happy Melly is to turn work into a great and gratifying experience through experiments, through the network, through building community. And we want you to join us in any way, whether it be a stakeholder, whether it be as a legal entity, whether it just be as a person who is inspiring others around them to do great things. We want you to join us and help grow healthy, adaptive organizations that are more like communities so that we can increase happiness at work and do great things together. And most importantly, have a really great time while doing great things together. So I guess what I'll do is I'll wrap it up with this last slide, and just feel free to ask questions or contact me after the presentation, or contact any of the board members, or visit the website for more information. And again, the Happy Melly video just came out. It's pretty easy to find, and I encourage you to watch that. It's a great overview. So I'll end there and just open it up for questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lisette. It's fabulous to actually finally hear something about Happy Melly. It's been something that I've heard about for a while and not really understood what it is. So it's great to get that coverage and that presentation. We have a question from Gitta. So Gitta says that I like the idea about community, but find it hard to see the business part in Happy Melly. Do you have any thoughts about that, Lisette?
Hard to see the business part in Happy Melly. Well, essentially it is the licensing of courseware. It's the community and the business come in where we're growing a network of legal entities who are licensing courseware and trainings to other people. So they're essentially paying into a centralized location for the licensing of the information that Happy Melly provides, and then going out and making money off of that information. So that's, in a sense, how we are sort of a community as a business, as a tribal business. I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay. I think it does. I think also, yes, it does. Yeah, Gitta's just replied. And also a question from Victor. Where can we find more information about how to join our community into a Happy Melly movement? I guess that's probably on the website, or?
Absolutely. There's of course, everything right now is on the website, and right now what we've done is there's a Google group that's been created where we're having discussions about everything that's going on in Happy Melly, and pretty much everything is transparent within the business. So whatever level that you want to get involved, we have a Trello board that we invite you to, and you can see all the different things that are happening in the lab and welcome you to join.
And I guess one thing that strikes me is that it's clear how a Happy Melly can appeal to an individual. Have you found that actual organizations or existing communities are also moving into Happy Melly as well?
Yeah, I mean, to me it seems like this is the most obvious way for businesses to head into it at the moment. Not just necessarily joining Happy Melly, but moving in the direction of, well, how do we create a more engaged workforce? I mean, it's a topic that's been around forever, but I think businesses are starting to really take it seriously now and change the way that they work. And I think the Agile movement's a perfect example of that. And most people are taking the Agile practices and trying to apply it to, per se, marketing or communication or sort of just changing the infrastructure of how business works. And Happy Melly is just another step in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, there doesn't appear to be any more questions. So thank you very much, Lisette. That was great. I suggest that it's 5 minutes to the hour, so I suggest we take a 5-minute break and rejoin at 10 o'clock. Okay, thank you. Okay, it's 10 o'clock, so welcome back everyone. Time to move on to our next topic and our next speaker. So this is Werner who will be speaking to us next, and Werner will be talking about systemic coaching and agile teams. So if we can change the screen over to Werner and enable his microphone, we should be ready to go. Okay, Werner, can you hear us? Hello, Werner, we cannot hear you at the moment.
Hello?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you now.
I'm now unmuted. Yeah, it's now
okay.
So, have you seen my presentation on the screen now?
Yes, I can see your screen, and everything looks good. So over to you, Werner.
Okay, thank you. So, hello and good evening. My name is Werner Moser. I'm from Austria and 54 years old. I'm working in the software industry since 35 years. There I started as a programmer, so I learned it from the base, moved then to over to project management, later on to line management, and since around 5 years I am working as a systemic and agile coach. I've been working in many domains, in like the telecom domain, in electronic financial transactions, crude oil industries, and others. As I said, around the last 5 years I went over to coaching, especially to systemic coaching. I'd like to talk tonight about something about systemic coaching, especially in agile environment. So what is systemic coaching? In systemic coaching, we base on Gregory Bateson's view of social systems. According to Gregory Bateson, social system depends on the people within the system. So what he means is people can't be seen alone. They are influenced by the surrounding social systems, and they are themselves influencing the environment. They are also influencing the social systems they are in. Also, social systems are dependent on the subjective interpretation of the people. So people are constructing and interpreting their own reality. Reality is different for different people. But also the rules and assumptions stated within a system are influencing the system. The rules are influencing people's view of the reality. And furthermore, we have interactions, we have the history and associated values which are influencing and where the systems are dependent on. So all these factors are influencing a social system. So what does this mean for us systemic? Systemic means a person is always a part of a social system. Persons are not alone. So we look at the whole and keep the context of the relevant system in mind. We try to focus on different views, on new insights and possible resources which support which we can use to support solutions. This might be own resources of the people we are talking with or we are working with, and this might be resources from other persons or systems that we could use to create solutions. One of the possible approaches to systemic coaching is the Kiel consulting model. In German it's the Kieler Beratungsmodell, so you possibly see later on the shorter KPM, which means Kieler Beratungsmodell. The Kiel consulting model was developed by Professor Uwe Grau in the 1980s at the University of Kiel together with his assistant Jens Möller. Coaching was, in this case, first applied to elite sports. The founders worked with the Handball Club DHW Kiel and also with the German Olympic sailing team. In the 1990s, together with Jürgen Hagens and Hans Tomaszek, the model was ported to the business area, where we are using this system now. If we have a look at the structure of the Kiel consulting model, works with this special structure and tries to concentrate on these 5 steps of joining, concern, goal, application, and transfer. So in the joining, we are connecting to another. This also includes the explanation of coaching. We are explaining that coaching is an expert model with the customer as an expert for his subjects and concerns, and the coach as an expert for the process. But also we talk about other topics, and we're talking about confidentiality and what the coach will do in the process and so on. Then we step over to the concern to get an overview of the themes and concerns of the topics of our clients, to find out what our clients want to work on. We also try to then focus on one of these concerns, to work on in one session, because we try to have a session of not more than 1 hour. When we found the concern that we are concentrating on, and we try to find out the goal, the target of the coaching, to know what which should come out of this coaching, so that the coachees would find it as valuable, to find out, so that he would find out a valuable outcome of the coaching. When we have to go, we change to the application, and to the process. So the application, that means then we decide how the coach can help and go through the process. And when we decided that, we walk through the process, and finally we go to the transfer to find out the next steps that our clients are planning to do. So I will come up on that in some more detail when we talk about the retrospective. The connection between systemic and agile. Well, I think the values, agile and systemic values, focusing on people's, they both are respecting people's ability to self-organize and find their own solutions. That is what we in systemic coaching says this expert model. We are sure that people are finding their own solutions and that it's not necessary for the coach to find the solutions for them. And reflection is basically in both approaches. Systemic coaching is a self-reflecting process, and Agile processes are based on reflection too, so like in reviews or retrospectives, but also in the daily. And I think many other parallels can be found between the two systems. So they have many common points, and we can combine that together. So to show you one possible approach of systemic coaching in Agile, I would like to talk about an example of a systemic Agile retrospective in comparison with the traditionally well-known Ivarson approach to Agile retrospectives. So in both approach, I would like to compare that in both approaches there are corresponding steps, but there are some differences. We will see that later. So the steps are not directly the same. Some of them are, but some of them a bit mixed. The Ivarson approach is more of a guideline, while the systemic coaching is a solution-focused process. We are more asking and trying to find out we try to help our clients to find their own solutions. Systemic coaching focuses on small steps and counts on the experience that these small steps lead to further and bigger changes. So for short, as I said, there are the steps that we have in both approaches. In the Ivarson approach, we begin with set the stage, and yeah, we could compare this with our joining phase. The gather data and concern is also more or less the same. Generate insight and decide what to do is a bit the mixture together with goal and approach, and then close to retrospective would also be a bit mixed, so I will show that later. So when we go to the different to the steps of a retrospective, we go first to the joining, where we share the plan, and that we do in both cases by explaining what will happen in the following retrospective and what the plan for the following process is. In systemic coaching, we have a proven approach, which is most highly regarded. As an example, we would invite team members to name one positive aspect about a colleague or even about the team. So as a possible question would be what did, and then he should find a person, what did John, as an example, very well in the last iteration, or what did the team very well in the last iteration. We do that to open the solution focus because we're looking at things that work good. In the next step, we are looking at the concerns that our clients or team members have. That's good comparable with SCADA data. So we ask our participants for their concerns. what we do is, in this case, is we try to ask for one concern for each person. The question could be, what is it that you would like to be talked about in this retrospective so that this retro is of value for you? So in this case, we not only create a shared data pool based on facts, but also we get everybody in, and we get a balance between the participants and focus on some few topics, because we try to get only one topic per person, but at least one topic per person. Then we step over to the goal phase. It's, in this case, what we also try first is to get out one common concern, and that we would like to work on within this retrospective, where we change to the goal phase, where we then can focus on one clear goal that is reachable within the relatively short time of a retrospective or of a coaching. So this I would compare with Create Insight. In systemic approaches, we focus on a clear goal for this retrospective. We check the goal on a realistic reachability. This gives us an understanding of all influences, and we get a clear focus on what we try to get within the retrospective. Getting a goal is generally not easy, and we should work hard on getting a clear goal for the retrospective. This is necessary to focus on solutions. When we have the goal for the retrospective, we ask for the application and the following process. Application and process I would compare with Create Insights and decide what to do. So this is a bit mixed. First, we clear out how the coach applies to the process. Mainly in retrospectives, the application of the coach is in some kind of moderation. The coach will ask solution-focused open questions like, what makes you notice that it goes in the right direction, or circular questions like, how would your manager notice that you went one step forward? We also challenge our clients or our team members to tell us about a desirable future. What we do is we create solution talk instead of problem talk whenever possible. This is coming from Steve DeShazer, one of the entrepreneurs of solution-focused brief therapy, which is also basic to systemic coaching. He said problem talk creates problems and solution talk creates solutions. So we try to concentrate on these solutions. We also try to focus on small steps, as we believe that small steps are leading to big changes. And also with this approach, we avoid the risk of too big steps, which then might be too heavy or too hard for, and therefore not realized. When we are, when the goal is reached and the process phase is finished with the over transfer, where we try to decide what to do, so that it's not the totally same again. So we can compare transfer with decide what to do and the close phase. We ask for next actions. We ask for realistic steps, and we ask for consequences. It's pretty often that people are not thinking about, they decide for some changes, but they do not think about the consequences that their changes or their steps would have. And with these next steps that we have, we are closing the retrospective. So as a summary, I would say systemic coaching works intensively with concern and goal, which supports an intensive solution focus. We value solution focus over problem focus. The problem may be interesting and important, but we focus on solutions. So we hear some information about the problem that's interesting for us and it's necessary for the process, but we are focusing on solutions. We value first small steps over big changes because big changes carry the risk of not being realized. We believe that first small steps lead to big changes. So I hope I'm in time and I go to this last page. Yes, that's it what I wanted to say. Thank you, and if you have any questions, let me hear.
Okay, great. Thank you, Werner. So yes, if anyone has any questions, please enter them into the questions window or the chat window in the control panel of the webinar software. Werner, I have I guess a general question, more around to do with a specific example where you've used this technique. Do you have any examples where it's been successful and has worked for you, and you think if the retrospective was done in a more traditional way, it may not have been successful, but because you used this systemic approach, it had a better outcome?
Yeah, I think there's one example with a development team which had big problems with knowledge transfer, and then we were talking about pair programming, and so it was a solution for them to decide for pair programming, and their decision was more or less to switch to pair programming completely for the full team, and we do it up from now. And my question then was if this is really realistic and which consequences this would have. And it was in the transfer, and they were thinking about that, and they redecided to do it for one pair first, so just do a small try, and then in another retrospective decide to change fully. And this was, from my point of view, really successfully, because they tried the small step, and afterwards they changed then completely to pair programming. So this was what we say we believe that first small steps are leading to big changes. They made the small step, and then it led to the big change.
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean. So even though the team may have said, let's try and do pair programming from this point onwards on a wholesale full team way, that was probably too much of a step for the team, and doing the small incremental probably helped.
Yeah.
And you mentioned as well in the phase around joining, the first phase, I think you mentioned the idea that one person asks a question of, not asks a question, one person makes a comment about what went well or what a person did well, and then that person then asks another person in the team. Is that the chain question or the link question technique?
Yeah, that's the chain question. I think it's important to do it as a chain question, because everybody should get high regard. So you can talk around in a circle, or one can take a choice to have high regard. Another person, but when a person got high regard, then another person should get the high regard. So we always should be able to find positive things for everybody in the team. And therefore we try to do it with the chain question and not to the coach.
Yeah, and I guess as a coach or a facilitator of this kind of discussion or meeting. You mentioned some of the questions, like the open questions that sometimes need to be asked. I guess that plays an important part in this in facilitating a meeting like this, to know what open questions to ask and when to ask them of the team.
What open questions?
Yeah, so it was just a comment rather than a question from me, but it was just, yeah, as a facilitator, it's important to know when to ask open questions of the team.
Yeah, that's important. Sorry, I didn't. It was technically I didn't understand you. Yeah, it's important to ask open questions and to open the solution mind. Was this? So because with open questions, you don't ask questions that you could answer with yes or no. You are asking open questions with so that people are creating new solutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if anyone has any more questions for Werner, please type them into the questions window. There doesn't seem to be any so far. Yeah, so we're a few minutes early, but maybe maybe we can switch over to Anders next, who will be talking about scaling Agile. So Werner, thank you very much, and
thank you.
Thank you, and we'll hand over to Anders in a moment.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just trying to see if Anders is registered in the software, and he seems to have dropped out for a moment. Yeah, okay. Okay, Anders, I am now making you the presenter. Okay, Anders, can you hear me? I cannot hear you at the moment. Is your microphone on mute? Still cannot hear anything, Anders. Let me just make sure.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Hello?
Yeah, okay,
good.
We can hear you.
So we're all good to go then?
Okay, fabulous. Yeah, good to go. Over to you, Anders.
Great. Yeah, so good to have so many still awake. At least I hope you're still awake. My name is Anders. I work at Spotify as an Agile coach, which means that I work with a couple of our teams in helping them to become really high-performing teams. So all the way from newly started teams to teams that have been around for a long time. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. I also work a lot with the whole organization in how we work and how we structure ourselves. And so that's why I'm here today, to talk about Spotify and how we are organized, and more specifically how we try to stay agile while growing from a small startup to a fairly big company at least. And so thanks to Frank for giving a great segue and a good start to the conference by talking about pretty much the same things that I will talk about. Difference being I will probably be a bit more specific about what we do at Spotify. So that was a good start to it at least. So I'm going to assume that you all know what Spotify is. The super short version of Spotify is that we want to provide the right music for every moment. So we really want to change the world and change how people listen to music and how people consume music across the world. So Spotify has been growing very fast. We're now more than 24 million active users. We have more than 6 million paying subscribers, and we are live in 28 countries. So we've been growing very, very fast in the last 5 years since we launched the service. We're also growing very fast as a company, and I guess that's more what I will talk about today. So going back 3 years roughly, Spotify, the tech department, was only 30 people, 30 developers sitting together in Stockholm and just hacking away on the product. We had just launched the desktop player, and that was basically what Spotify was. Fast forward 3 years, and we're now more than 300 developers across the world. So the main office is still here in Stockholm with more than 200 developers. We have a small team in Gothenburg. We have quite a few teams in New York, and we have a small team in San Francisco as well. So we're spread out over 3 different time zones in 4 offices, and with more than 40 teams right now. And the whole company has gone through a similar growth. So the whole company is now more than 800 people. So we're really, really growing fast. But we're not growing fast just because it's fun to grow or because we want to become a really big company. For us, growing big does not have a value in itself. But we're really here to change the world and how people listen to music. And because we have so many ideas and so many things that we want to accomplish, we believe that we must be a big company to fulfill all those goals. But often when a company grows big, they also tend to become very slow. Decisions take a longer time, things scale, and it just becomes slower, just like Frank talked about. And that's really what we want to avoid. So our big challenge is to keep growing and keep becoming bigger, but also finding a way of working that allows us to keep our speed and keep being a really fast, nimble startup, while also going to a bigger scale. And so I'm going to talk today about how we've achieved that so far and what our guiding principles have been. So our guiding principle to scaling the company and more importantly scaling Agile is autonomy. So we really use autonomy in everything we do. We try to achieve more autonomy. And everything we've done in terms of organization has been in order to support autonomy even more. So when we add structure because we grow bigger, it's always to support autonomy rather than to remove it. And so we're talking autonomy all the way from an individual level, where we try to achieve empowerment and have people that really care about their work and can take decisions themselves and influence their work, to team levels and then on other levels as well. So we're really talking autonomy on several levels here. So when you work as an engineer or a developer at Spotify, your core unit of work, what you really care about is your squad. So your squad is like a scrum team or your small mini startup. And that's really what we want to achieve. Just like, again, like Frank talked about, we want to achieve the feeling of a mini startup or in each team, in each squad. And so for us, every squad is self-organizing. They're cross-functional, so everyone who's needed in the team should be in the team. So that means that they have a product owner, they have QA people, they have UX people if that's needed. We also want them to be fairly small, so we try to keep them to 5 to 7 engineers and definitely less than 10. We have a few teams that are bigger than 10, but that's usually a sign that they're about to split them into 2 separate teams. The squads are always co-located as well, so they sit together and work really tightly together. And the most important part with being a squad, I would say, is that they really, really own their own product, which is why we say it should be like a mini startup. So they should own a small part of the Spotify service and really build that small part, that product, and take all the decisions about what they want to build, when it's ready for release, and then take it all the way from idea to customers. So we don't just say that, oh, yeah, it should feel like a mini startup, but we really want to specify what we mean when we say this. So we have a definition of what it means to be an autonomous squad. And so we've defined 7 areas that we believe should be true for every squad at Spotify. So we say that they should have a dedicated product owner. So a person that sits together with a team and that are specialized in understanding the business needs and end users. but really sitting with the team and being part of the team and working full-time with only that team. They should also have an Agile coach supporting them, helping them find a way of working that really works for them and helping them become a high-performing team. We also say that all the members in the squad should be able to influence their work. This means that they are allowed to take on the task that they want to work on, so they structure and decide who work on what rather than having someone assigning work to them. It also means that they have 10% hack time to spend on their own projects. And it also means we have very liberal office hours, so people come and go when they feel like, as long as it works for the team. It should also be easy to release for a squad. So when you have your product and you feel that this is now ready for end users, it should be really easy for a squad to take it from development to being live with real users without having dependencies to other teams or needing the help from another team in order to get it out. We also say that a squad should have a process that really fits the team and their context. I'm going to come back to this a bit. And most importantly, we say that a squad should have a strong mission that they really care about and that they work with and work to fulfill, and they work with that for a longer time. So an example mission could be build the best radio experience in the world. And so they would build the radio experience within Spotify and really try to perfect what it means to have a really good radio at Spotify. And the last part is that they should feel that they have an organizational support. So even though they're a small startup or a small squad, they should also have support from the company to help them solve problems that might be too big for them to solve themselves. So for example, getting help with hiring, etc. So they should have support from the organization when they need it and know who to turn to. So what is those different products then that all the squads work with? I used to get a question if one squad is working with a whole desktop player. That's definitely not the case. So an example squad could be working with a playback experience and focusing on making, when you press play, it just starts playing immediately and doesn't get any stutters or buffering waits, etc. So that's just one squad and their mission, and they're working full-time on just making the playback experience as nice as possible. Another squad might be focusing on the playlist and the playlist system and building your collection. And yet another squad is focusing on what's new page or the new discover page that you see the first time you start the application. And we have another squad building each mobile client. We have a squad building the iOS client and building the Android client. At least that used to be true. Now they build the iOS client or the iPhone client as a platform, so other squads can build their features on top of that. So if you are the radio squad and you build the radio, you will build the radio feature in the desktop player, in the web player, but also on all the mobile platforms and own it across all platforms. And since this is a process conference, I thought I'll talk a little bit more about process. So we want every squad to really find a way of working that fits them. And Spotify used to be a Scrum-only shop where all our teams were running Scrum, and we had synchronized 3-week sprints where everyone had 3-week sprints and had retrospectives at the same time, demos at the same time, etc. Since then, we've moved away from this and moved towards having different sprint length and also some teams working with Kanban or just a continuous flow. So before this presentation, we actually went around and asked our teams what sort of process they were working with. And some said Scrum, some said Kanban, and some teams didn't really know, but the way they described it made it sound like it was very similar to Kanban, or at least a very continuous flow. So this is what it looks like at Spotify right now. We have 11 teams working with Scrum. More than a third of them are using Kanban or some kind of Kanban implementation. And almost another third is using something similar to Kanban, or a continuous flow at least, with some simple Kanban rules, like limiting their work in progress, for example. And what we often see is that when we start new teams and they start building a new product, they often start with Scrum, because then it's fairly easy for them to plan ahead for 3 weeks at a time. But as they get closer to release and they want to push it live to real users, they tend to go towards shorter sprints because they need a quicker feedback cycle. And often when they have a live product, so they work with both maintenance of their live product, but also building new features and doing small tests and tweaks, they tend to go towards Kanban instead and a continuous flow. So again, we don't just say that this is the way it should be for a squad. We really want to know if that's how it works for a squad at Spotify. So we go out every quarter or every half year and we ask the squads how they are doing. So they get to rate themselves and tell us that, yeah, it looks good. We have a dedicated product owner. We have an Agile coach. But it's really, really hard to release. And because we do this every quarter, we can also start seeing trends over time and see, is the situation improving or is it deteriorating, and do we need to do anything about this? So this is not meant at all as a performance review of the team or anything. It's just meant as a feedback to the company of where we can support the squad even more, and how our model is doing. Are our squads actually being autonomous, or do we need to change something bigger in the company? It also works as a kind of retrospective for the squad where they can see where they need to become better. And so because we do this with all our squads, we can also start collecting all those results to start seeing patterns within the organization. So for example, this would show us that several teams are having problems releasing and it's not getting any better really. So we probably need to do something about releasing here, probably a big technical change or something else. We also start seeing that 2 teams are missing an Agile coach. So we probably need to step in here and help them with hiring a new Agile coach, for example. So of course, some of those problems we could have seen anyway, but you start seeing new patterns when collecting data like this as well. So the squads are really focused on delivery and building really great products and getting them out to real users. But we also want to make sure that the developers at Spotify and the engineers here are really, really good developers and that they stay good. So we came up with something that we call chapters, which is really a competence group. So they're focused on personal development and good practices in a specific area. So they're focused around a specific skill, for example, QA or web development or backend. So as a backend developer, I will be part of my squad working on my product, but I will also be part of a backend chapter. So the backend chapter gets together and discusses architecture, backend development in general, good practices. And in the chapter is also where you have your manager. So your direct manager, your chapter lead, will be an active developer in another squad or in the same squad as you, and spend roughly 50% of his or her time doing active development, and then spending 50% of his or her time coaching the other chapter members and helping them grow and mentor them. So it's really focused on personal development and coaching and making sure that we can support the squads in building really strong individuals. So this model worked really well with us with squads and chapters for a long time until we reached approximately 150, 200 people. Again, back to Frank, he mentioned the Dunbar number, and that's really the limit we ran into. Around 200 people, we started seeing that people didn't know each other by face, they didn't recognize each other, they didn't know each other by name either, and they certainly didn't know everyone in the company and what everyone was working on. So we wanted to create a smaller group, a family where you could really know everyone you worked with and get together and solve problems. So that's when we started introducing tribes. And so today we have 7 tribes across the company, and a tribe is really a grouping of squads. So we take squads that belong together, that have a very similar mission, and we group them together. So an example of that could be the music player tribe. So they take squads that are focused on building the core music player experience, which would be playback, building playlists and collection, and some other core features that was basically what what Spotify was when we launched as a service. And so we grouped them all into one tribe. That means that they can get together and help each other achieving this joint mission of providing fast and reliable access to all the world's music. And that means that they have a lot of similar problems that they solve together rather as individual teams. Another example of a tribe could be the infrastructure tribe, where we put all squads working with infrastructure in the company together. And that means that they can get together and helping out each other. Infrastructure is a bit different. They have very similar missions for each squad, but instead they work in very similar contexts. So they're all kind of like a service squad, helping other squads in the company by building tools for them or building infrastructure. So they instead gather as a tribe to learn from each other what it means to be a service squad and building infrastructure. And they get together and solve a lot of common problems around that. So that's also meant just as a support to the squads and helping them be truly autonomous. But we don't want those tribes or tribe boundaries to become hard boundaries. So if you're in the infrastructure squad and you are working with infrastructure or a tool that a feature squad will, the feature squad building the radio will be using, of course you're going to collaborate directly with each other. So they go and set up all the collaborations needed directly with one another. And this creates a sort of network organization where different squads work with each other at different times. And something we have noticed is that this tends to shift very fast. So a squad might be working together with another squad for a couple of weeks or a month or two, and then they switch and go on to building new products or new features within their product. And that means that they collaborate with other squads instead. So this network organization is constantly shifting and changing. But we really want to avoid, those tribe boundaries becoming hard and them going like through the tribe lead to get approval for something to work with another tribe. So we always want them to directly collaborate with each other. And so all those collaborations create a sort of dependency, right? So you work together on a system, then you have to wait for each other, or you want to reuse something that another squad has built, which is a kind of dependency. And when we introduced the tribes, our initial thinking was that we had to remove all those dependencies. We thought that being a squad meant that you had to be truly independent. But what we realized over time was that it's not having those dependencies that's a problem. In many cases, we actually even built the tribes or designed the tribes to have those dependencies. So between the infrastructure tribe and all the other squads, we will have a lot of dependencies because they're building tools and infrastructures that everyone else is going to use. What we instead realized was that we only call the dependency when it's not working, and when it's working, it's called collaboration. So our goal is to sometimes remove those dependencies and try to avoid them, and sometimes it's just to make it work as well as possible through process changes, through technical changes, etc. So how we solve dependencies depends a lot. Sometimes it's by moving a couple of people around, sometimes it's by changing a mission, and quite often it's by some technical solution or building a new tool or helping out at an API. But it's also important to point out that even though a squad is working on their product, anyone else can go in and make changes in their systems if they need to make changes in order to not be blocked by them. So we do a lot to look at those dependencies and remove some and especially try to make them work as well as possible. So a short summary then is we're growing really fast as a company, and what has worked really well for us so far is to use autonomy as a guiding principle. So everything we've done so far, every time we had to restructure or solve a problem, we've tried to look at how do we keep autonomy or even make an even stronger autonomy, and how can we support those autonomous squads to be able to move as fast as possible without being blocked by each other. Thank you. And yeah, we can take some questions now, and also if you want to reach out or Twitter or email, that's fine as well.
Great. Thanks, Anders. That's really interesting to see how Spotify are tackling that problem that often occurs with organisations as they scale and grow and have the challenges that presents. So if anyone has any questions, please enter them into the questions window or the chat window. We have one from Adrian. So Anders, Adrian's asking, are the coaches shared between squads?
Yeah, so as an Agile coach, I usually work with 2 or 3 squads, depends a bit. But yeah, so we work with several squads. But we do that full time, so I don't do any development or QA or anything else.
Right, so it's a dedicated coach, but across maybe 1 or 2 or 3 squads. Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the tribe level as well, are there coaches for a tribe also, or how does that work?
So I as a coach belong to one specific tribe, and I work with a couple of the squads within the tribe, but we don't have any coaches on the tribe level. It's more like every coach within the tribe do some work with the tribe lead and the others as well. So as a coach, I usually spend some of my time working with individuals, some of my time working with squads or teams, and some of my time working with the whole tribe or the whole organization.
Okay. Yeah. Another question from Frank. He asks, I wonder how the squad collaboration works between different office locations.
Yeah, so first we try to keep all the squads co-located, so that means that a single squad is never in 2 office locations, or at least very rarely. Sometimes we have seen squads that are in 2 locations, but then it's usually better to split them into 2 separate teams. But when you are separate teams and want to collaborate across office areas and offices, and especially across time zones, that introduces some difficulties. How we solve that is different from time to time. Usually they set up some kind of sync meeting in the afternoon, so afternoon for Sweden and early morning for New York. But very much depends to the teams how they choose to solve their problems.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of left up to the teams to work out their best way of collaborating.
We have some good practices, of course, stuff that we've seen work better or not as good. So for example, if a team is going to work with another team for a long time, they usually try to set up regular sync meetings, but also demo every week together and make sure that the code is always integrated, etc.
Okay. Another question. This one's from Jan. Jan says you didn't mention guilds. Have you given up on that concept?
We haven't given up on it. That was mostly due to time constraints. So guilds, really shortly for those who haven't seen our article, is a collection of chapters across tribes. So if you have a QA chapter in one tribe and a QA chapter in another tribe, we also have a QA guild, bringing all those QA people together in one big guild, and they do competence sharing and knowledge sharing across the whole company.
Okay, so it kind of follows on to the next question, which was from Adrian. Can you talk a little bit about how you take learnings about process from one squad to another squad or tribe?
So just like QA people are part of a guild, we also have an Agile coach guild, which is where a lot of the actual process learning is done. So the Agile coaches get together weekly and share a lot of information and learnings with each other and best practices or things that we've seen that work well for us. When it comes to bigger projects, we also tend to have big retrospectives, post-mortems, and a lot of other learning opportunities that we try to share with the whole company.
Okay. And a question from Nikos. How often as an organization do you stop and reflect and make changes?
That very much depends. I mean, if you look at a specific squad, they will have retrospectives, anything from weekly up to every 3 weeks. As an organization, we do it after every big project that we have, which is at least every half year, we have some kind of bigger retrospective. But we also do, I mean, we do changes all the time, and that's something that you learn to appreciate being at Spotify, is that it's constantly changing. So I've been part of a few major changes. For example, when we introduced tribes, and that was introduced and rolled out over a couple of months only, from idea to getting everyone's feedback to rolling it out and changing the whole structure of the company. So we do change fast, but also quite often.
Okay. So I guess the Kanban teams or the Kanban-esque teams have a regular cadence on by which they hold a form of inspect and adapt or retrospective type meeting.
Yeah, I don't know of any team that doesn't have some kind of cadence for retrospectives as well.
Okay. A question also from Tonio. Autonomy. It seems the teams decide when to release and what to release and how. Do they sometimes forecast about when they will do a release?
Yeah. So yes, definitely. In some cases, it's not that important to us when we release. It's much more important to us to release the right thing when we think it's ready. But we of course still do forecasting and try to keep to that, or I mean forecast and change and update the forecast and let the rest of the company know when we are not meeting the forecast or when the forecast is changing. Sometimes we have external deadlines when we work with external partners or other, like a big event, for example, when launching something. But most of the time we try to use forecasts and have a flexible date instead. And a lot of squads try to break it down to more like continuous small releases, so releasing daily or releasing weekly rather than going for bigger releases. But it very much depends on the product.
Right, but I guess there is that need within Spotify to be able to communicate as new features are released and then available for other squads or teams to use. Then there is that element of forecasting and then communicating what is due to be released and by when. Yeah, definitely. Especially when teams look at their own roadmaps, they sometimes need to know when will this tool, infrastructure, API, etc. be ready. Okay. A question from Javor. How did you end up with infrastructure squads? Isn't it more something like a chapter?
That's a good question. So I think we actually started with a couple of squads building tools. So we had one squad building tools for operations, and we had another squad building tools for development, and then we had a couple of people building in general infrastructure. But we also have seen that this is such a big important part for Spotify. So infrastructure is one of our bigger tribes actually, and it's a lot about building self-service architecture, allowing people, other squads to easily roll out new services, set up new machines, etc., without getting active help from operations or anyone else. So it's concrete work that I have to do, which means that we want to have them in a squad. Does that answer the question?
Right. Okay. I believe so. Maybe Javor, if you can just put in a comment whether that answers your question adequately. +1. You get +1. Okay. And Nikos, a question from Nikos. Do you keep squads stable? And do they change their team members based on new feature needs?
We do try to keep squads stable over a longer time. So we want the squad to really work with a mission for a long time. And that means that the squad members can really also build domain knowledge within that product area. So they start to become really good at knowing what a really good radio experience means, for example. We have had problems with this historically because we're growing so fast. So I only know of a few teams that have worked together for a full year, and most of them have changed or added a few members or grown too big and split in less time than that. But our goal is definitely to keep them stable over time, while also allowing for some personal movement when you want to have new challenges, etc. So I think it's a balance.
Okay. And also a question for me is around, I guess, architecture, whether that be software architecture or infrastructure architecture, and how is that I guess managed or evolved or developed? Do you have a chief architect or a squad that just looks after architecture? Or is it a group of teams that do it? How does that work?
So in general, we have a extremely service-oriented architecture. So that means that you're building your own very, very small service specifically for what you need, basically. And then we have a few core services that are being used by more teams and other services. So that means that while building your own service, you are fairly flexible in building that for suiting your specific needs. We do have I think 2 chief architects right now, or architects that work across the company. But what they do is more bumblebeing around and talking to all the teams. So when you want to launch a new service or start creating a new service, you can ping the architect and let him know that this is the system we are looking to build, and this is how we're thinking right now and thinking about designing it. And he will come back with some feedback to you, or rather usually good questions. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And then also connect you with other teams that have built similar services or that will be using your service. So connect you to them and have you sit down and discuss what are the needs for this system and how should we build it in the best possible way. So it's never, it's always the team owning their architecture and architecting their system, but there's loads of support systems for them to get as much feedback as possible from the rest of the company.
Okay, great. Well, we're just running slightly over time, so I think that's all the questions we have as well. So thanks, Anders. That was
Thank you very much.
That was fascinating. Thank you. And I guess we'll just end up finishing there. I think we just bring up my screen. So thank you everyone for staying so late and listening and attending. Thanks also to our 4 speakers, Lisette, Werner, Frank, and Anders. The presentation recordings, they were all recorded and they will be uploaded as well as the slides from each of the presentations to the bathtubconference.org website. That will probably happen tomorrow or very soon. And also tomorrow we will send some form of communication through the webinar software to ask for feedback. So we'll be very grateful for your feedback and let us know how we can improve and make things better. So thanks again everyone, and just really, if anyone didn't catch it at the beginning, the AIL 2013 conference is in August in Bucharest in Romania, and you can find out more information by going to ail2013.ailnetwork.eu. Okay, thank you everyone, and I think that concludes this Bathtub conference. Okay, good night, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.